Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, who's going to replace Jaden McDaniels? He's out for a minimum of 2 weeks, very likely longer than that with the sprained ankle he suffered late in the win over the Spurs on Monday. Who's going to take his minutes? Who will be the most vital addition, really, or I guess player that will see more time in the rotation moving forward? Plus, a little more about Karl-Anthony Towns' dominance and everything that happened in his 60-point game on Monday night. I want to revisit that. And then a look ahead to the Lakers game Wednesday night. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm also the editor of Dunking with Wolves, the Timberwolves site on the Fansided Network. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Check out prizepicks.com and use promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy hump day and happy Timberwolves game day. Plenty to talk about on the show today. The headline, of course, is Jaden McDaniels' injury. What are the Wolves going to do to replace McDaniels? I want to get to that here in just a minute. First of all, though, thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. It's greatly appreciated. You can also, if you're not aware, you can find this podcast anywhere. It's free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, from Apple to Google, Spotify to Odyssey. Anywhere you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves and all your favorite Locked On podcasts. You can follow this show on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves, and my account, which is at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. All right. So while we're still basking in the glow collectively, and I speak on behalf, I think, of all Timberwolves followers, of Karl-Anthony Towns' phenomenal 60.17 rebound performance on Monday in the win over the Spurs. And by the way, right before recording this, Kyrie Irving dropped 60 himself to, of course, tie Karl-Anthony Towns. His season high across the NBA lasted for less than 24 hours. Well, I guess it's still the season high, but now it's tied with Kyrie Irving. At any rate, still basking in the glow of the Monday night performance from Cat. However, of course, the damper that showed up in that performance at the very end was Jaden McDaniels' rolled ankle with roughly 45 seconds left in the game. I want to cover that first. I want to talk a little more about Cat and really, I guess, more the Timberwolves and the offense specifically in the broader context of the league where the Wolves sit in the standings and compared to the teams around them, offensively, defensively, all that stuff, point differential as of right now. I want to do that next segment, and then we'll close by talking Wolves-Lakers. But first, let's talk about Jaden McDaniels. The game wasn't – this was one of those games where the outcome was pretty much decided, but the Spurs were hanging around. Of course, Towns went back out to try and get the 60 points. First to get the franchise scoring record, which he did with the free throw. Then he went and he got the 60 with the made three. I'm sure he would have gotten pulled if he had missed that shot anyway by Chris Finch. But it was still like a 3-possession game. It's not like you're going to, typically coaches aren't going to pull everybody for the final 60 seconds in what wasn't a complete and utter blowout. So there's no fault here from Chris Finch. It just stinks that it had to happen in the final minute of a game that really at that point was out of reach. Jaden McDaniels turned his ankle. I think he stepped on Zach Collins' foot coming down, attempting to grab a rebound. And the Timberwolves announced late Tuesday that the MRI revealed a sprained ankle, that he would be reevaluated in 2 weeks. That doesn't mean he'll be playing in 2 weeks. That means he will be evaluated in 2 weeks. There's various reports out there. It could be much longer. It could be over a month. Of course, a month from now is, I think we're like 28 days from the playing game, 26 days from the playing game, from the first playing game. At this point, the Wolves are almost, I think they're a game away from clinching at worst a 10 seed, which obviously they'd have to completely collapse to be in the conversation for 9 or 10 at this point, especially 10. Speaking of, we'll get to the Lakers a little bit later. But as of right now, well, they're only a game and a half out of 6, and they're only a couple games out of the 5 spot. Or actually, I have it right here. Is it a couple games, or is it? They're only a game and a half out of 6, and they're 3 games out of 5, and actually 3 games out of 4. The most likely scenario is still that they finish in 7th and have to win a play-in game. So they get 2 shots to win a play-in game. that's right at that 4 weeks, which again is not official. The evaluation is going to happen in 2 weeks, but there have been some timelines thrown around that it's more like a month. I think John Krasinski of The Athletic mentioned that. There was somebody else locally that mentioned, I'm forgetting who it was, and I apologize, that the concern is that it could be more like a month-long injury. So a little more than your run-of-the-mill twisted ankle, certainly. That's obviously a concern. What does Jaden McDaniels do for the Timberwolves? Well, he isn't a preferred starter for them when Jared Vanderbilt's healthy. Of course, he's been starting more of late with Vando's injured the bruised quadriceps. So it impacts their starting lineup as long as Vando's hurt, which, by the way, Vanderbilt's questionable for Wednesday's game against the Lakers and hasn't played in the last 2 games. So if there's no Vando, does that mean Taurean Prince starts starts at the 4? I mean, there isn't, with no Vando and no Jaden McDaniels, there isn't an obvious answer to play the 4 for the Timberwolves. And that's a challenge. I mean, you're looking at, what does the starting lineup look like? Naz Reid's probably not going to start at the 4. It's very likely Taurean Prince is the answer. But then how do you backfill these minutes as the trickle down happens? Is it a bump in minutes for, well, certainly for, in addition to Taurean Prince, Jalen Noel is going to see a bump in minutes because they're very likely going to, McDaniels is playing a lot more 3 this year than he is a 4, but he's been starting at the 4 with no Vanderbilt. So you bump Prince up to the 4, and then that puts Malik Beasley at the 2 and Anthony Edwards at the 3 more frequently. We're going to see, as long as Jordan McLaughlin comes back, he sat out again due to injury. He's missed 2 of the last 3 games with the groin tightness. If McLaughlin's healthy, we'll see more 2-point guard lineups with the 3-man rotation of D'Angelo Russell, Patrick Beverley, and Jordan McLaughlin. So we'll see more 2-point guard lineups with Beasley potentially at the 3 and Edwards even playing some 4. We've seen just a little bit of that this year. I think Taurean Prince and Jalen Noel are the 2 guys that see the biggest minutes increase. But what it does is it takes away the Timberwolves' most versatile defender, and probably their best. Well, I take that back. Patrick Beverley is the Timberwolves' best defender. McDaniels is their most versatile defender who can really guard comfortably basically all 2s and 3s, most 4s and some 1s on switches. He's very comfortable there as well. And so no Jaden McDaniels, and potentially, in the short term, the near term, no Jared Vanderbilt takes that off the table. The Wolves are going to ask a lot more of Anthony Edwards defensively. They're going to ask a lot more of Taurean Prince defensively, and Jalen Noel has to be more consistent. I think that's the biggest thing. I think Prince moves into the starting lineup. Noel and Beasley and Edwards are all going to be essentially bumped up a spot and be asked to play a little bit bigger, be a little better on the glass, be a little bit more willing to be switchable and guard bigger players. I do think we'll see a little more Josh Okogie. I think he brings the edge that McDaniels does to some extent, and certainly Vanderbilt does. And again, hopefully Vando can play a little bit more here moving forward. But I think we will see some more Josh Okogie. Now, certainly, Jaden McDaniels, especially of late, has been really good offensively, like genuinely a good offensive player. So trading those minutes out for even a few minutes of Josh Okogie is going to really hurt on the offensive end of the floor. But they need a little bit of that edge, that energy, that hustle. And if like say on Wednesday against the Lakers, that's the perfect game. I mean, if there's no Jared Vanderbilt, if he doesn't play and we know Jaden McDaniels is out, you have to give Josh Okogie some minutes. That's a winnable game, and we'll get to the matchup here in a little bit, but the Wolves should win that game against the Lakers 8 times out of 10 in this particular matchup with no Anthony Davis for LA, of course. Give Josh Okogie some run. This is a game where the Wolves may come out flat. They could be sad about the McDaniels thing. I mean, coming home after a long road trip, they could think this is a cakewalk type of a thing. Get Josh Okogie on the floor to play hard. And give you some energy minutes and maybe build some confidence for him in case you need him. Remember, after this Lakers game Wednesday, the next 7 games are against playoff teams, most of whom are top 5 seeds in their respective conferences. So perhaps we see some more Josh Okogie. I think it's less likely we see more Leandro Bolmaro, but we can't completely rule it out. If Okogie plays and doesn't play well, and if Vando's out, perhaps we see some Bolmaro here. He's been with the team a lot more lately and has been dressed and everything. So can't rule that out. But I think immediately it means Prince is in the lineup. We see more Noel. We see Beasley playing a little bit more 3, potentially Edwards playing some at the 4. Certainly the potential for a few Josh Okogie minutes, and the outside chance that we'll see more Leandro Bolmaro. In terms of adding another player, let's do that next. Actually, I do have a thought on that. There is some some talk about the Wolves adding a player to the roster. So I want to hit that next, and then take a broader look at the Timberwolves here recently, as well as a little bit more about Karl-Anthony Towns in his game on Monday. We're going to do that next. First, though, before we do, let's talk about our title sponsors of today's program, and that, of course, is our friends at Prize Picks. All right, NBA fans, are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning app Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it, and I know you will too. It's super easy to use. You just pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under in their projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. That's all it is. So it's you against the over-under. You can make your entry in less than 60 seconds. It really is that easy. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. You can use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. There's a variety of options. So, for instance, you can pick any prop you can think of: points scored, rebounds, steals. You can also do mixed sport entries. So, back during football season, this was fun on Sundays. Or even Monday night, you could pick Towns over on points, Kirk Cousins over on interceptions. If you're a Vikings fan and you're a masochist, maybe that's your pick. Or you hate the Packers, you're picking Aaron Rodgers under on touchdowns, Karl-Anthony Towns over on points. You could do that. You can also mix other sports that are ongoing. Baseball is about to kick off. You could do college basketball here with the big tournament coming up this week. That's going to be fun if you want to mix sport between NBA and college basketball. You can do MMA, soccer. Once football kicks off again in the fall, college football, NFL, the whole thing. For a limited time, Prize Picks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans only. Sign up today and use code NBA. $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point. All right, thanks again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every single NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. It's the best way to get caught up on the previous night's NBA action, better than the highlight shows, than just reading the box scores. This is the best way. I mean, you're going to get 60 to 90 seconds from each of our hosts who watch the game intently and have insights beyond the box score. So be sure to check that out if you want to know what happened the previous night around the NBA. Okay. So back to Towns' game on Monday. Again, if you missed this somehow, this was the 5th highest scoring, the 32 points in the third quarter. Towns scored the 5th most points in any quarter in NBA history, which is crazy. The most in the last, I think, 4 years or so since Klay Thompson's 37. I think Kevin Love around that time had 34. But the most in a long time. 60 and 15, only the third center to ever have a 60 and 15 game, joining Shaq and Wilt. Plenty of other 60, not that many guys have eclipsed 60 points. It was the high in the season, in the NBA season so far, until Kyrie also scored 60 on Tuesday. And there isn't, I talked a lot about this on Monday. If you missed the show, or excuse me, Tuesday show, I talked about how Towns took what the defense gave him. And very literally, like if you just watch the Sports Center highlights or whatever from the game, you're going to see a lot of threes. And he shot 7 of 11 from 3. A couple of those step backs, the one in the corner, and the one, and that one in particular, but also the one where he hit the 60 points in the fourth quarter. Those were nuts. They just were. 7 of 11. I never get tired of watching Towns shoot threes. But the more impressive thing to me was that most of those came late in the game. The defense was playing up on him. He was driving to the basket. In the first half, he wasn't getting foul calls. I mean, he still ended up with 24, I think, at the half. But he wasn't getting foul calls, yet he was still scoring those running bank shots that he kind of hits going either direction. He had a couple of kind of pull-up floater type shots, a couple of tough baseline runners, just ridiculous shots that he was making. And then as the defense started to give a little bit to try and, get a better angle to slow down his drives, started jab stepping and shooting threes. It was really kind of surgical the way that Towns approached scoring 60 points in this game. And of the 17 rebounds, only 2 were offensive. And I believe he scored on both of those offensive rebounds. One in particular was really impressive. It's just a well-rounded, again, I think surgical is the best word, performance, because he really did pick his spots. And it just completely overwhelmed the Spurs. And if you go back and watch his possessions, I mean, he wasn't scoring on post-ups. I don't believe he scored on a single post-up opportunity in this game. This was drives, almost entirely drives and spot-up spot up shooting opportunities from the perimeter. And it's not like he was really, I don't think very many of his threes, if any at all, were assisted. I think these were all isolation situations, a jab step, a step back, a couple of crossovers, and just, draining a 3-pointer from basically a 7-footer. Just crazy, crazy stuff. The broader context here, of course, the NBA was also distracted by the Joel Embiid Nikola Jokic showdown on Monday, which unfortunately the Nuggets came away victorious, leaving the Wolves still a game and a half behind Denver. But this is very topical now, right? So if you listen to any who's the best big men in the NBA conversation, it's Jokic and Embiid in some order. Obviously, Jokic, the reigning MVP, Embiid, kind of the odds-on favorite to win it this year. We can say those are the two best bigs. Karl-Anthony Towns is third. I could probably do a whole show on this. But Anthony Davis, ironically, who the Wolves play Wednesday. He's out, but they play his team Wednesday. A lot of people may try and sneak him ahead of Towns still, but obviously given we could say defensively he's a better player, but offensively, I don't really think it's close. Karl-Anthony Towns is a better offensive player, and you take the whole package, and Towns is the third best big in the league. So all three of those other guys, Davis, Embiid, and Jokic, are all very topical right now, given the MVP race, who the Wolves are playing, who they're chasing in the standings in Denver. And speaking of the standings, the Timberwolves sit as of right now, and this is recording this after all the games on Tuesday. Nobody around the Wolves actually played at all. Pelicans are several spots back, and Memphis is several spots ahead. Those are the teams that are closest. Excuse me, but the Timberwolves are 1.5 games behind Denver for the 6th seed. They are now 4.5 games clear of the Clippers in 7th place. Just the Wolves should not fall out of 7th place, right? Now, obviously, this next stretch is going to be extremely difficult for Minnesota. 7 straight, very difficult games before closing the year with 4 easier ones. 5 easier ones. The Timberwolves are a game and a half behind Denver, 4.5 up on the Clippers. They're only 3 back of Dallas and Utah, who are tied for the 4th and 5th spots in the West. So they're only 3 games back of the number 4 seed, which of course means home court advantage in the first round in the Western Conference. The thing that's most interesting to me, 2 things here. We'll start with the net rating. The Timberwolves, or I should say point differential. The Timberwolves point differential is 3.1. This is according to ESPN standings. That's a whole half point ahead of Denver, who, of course, Denver's a game and a half ahead of Minnesota, but their differential is 2.6. The Wolves have a half point better differential than Denver, and they have the same differential as the Dallas Mavericks. So they have the same point differential as the number 5 team in the West, and a better point differential, significantly better, really, than Denver, who's in 6th. That portends future success. Now, again, the schedule has been very easy of late. We know that. But you take the full body of work over the last, 12 weeks now? 10 weeks, I guess 10 weeks going back to January 1st. Minnesota is the number 1 offense in the league. They're one of only 3 teams that has had a top 5 offense and defense in terms of efficiency, offensive rating, defensive rating, along with Memphis and Phoenix. In the entire league, the only 3 teams that have had a top 5 offense and top 5 defense since the start of the season. And now the Wolves are top 10 in both metrics. In terms of both offensive and defensive rating. The Wolves are, depending on if you go to NBA.com, go to Basketball Reference, they're number 7 in offensive rating. They slid from 10th to 11th in defensive rating after the 139 or whatever it was. 139 they gave up to San Antonio in the win on Monday. But no matter how you slice it, this is an above average defensive team, moderately above average, right? I think that early in the season, they got away with some stuff. And then there was some also swung back the other way when there was the health and safety protocols list in December and January and injuries and all that stuff. I think it's a slightly above average defense, but the offense, this is much more what we were expecting this season from the Timberwolves. This is truly a top 5 offense league wide and maybe top 3. Again, number 1 offense in the league since January 1st. That's not a small sample size. And they're not a bottom 10 offense like they were for the first 8 weeks of the season. This offense is going to be incredible. I talked about this all last offseason. I was worried about the defense. I thought at best it'd be middle of the pack, and I thought the offense would easily be top 10. That's probably where we're going to settle, right? The Wolves are going to finish after this next stretch. They're going to finish 13th, 14th, maybe 15th in defensive rating after they play the Bucks and, the Celtics and all these teams they got to play here coming up. But offensively, they're going to be a top 5 offense when this is all said and done. They're 7 right now. They're going to be a top 5 offense. Losing Jaden McDaniels, I know he's been playing better offensively. That's not going to hurt them in terms of their offensive rating. In fact, if it means more Jalen Noel and more Taurean Prince, it may help them, honestly, in terms of the offensive rating specifically. I'm not at all suggesting they're better without Jaden McDaniels. I'm just speaking about the offensive rating. So we're going to look back at this and say, holy cow, this is legit a top 3 offense, top 5 offense in the league, a middle of the pack defense, which is a little better than I expected them to be. And what did I say before the season? I had them at 42, max 44 wins. I've updated that to 44 to 46 wins. They're already at 40. They're probably going to win 45 or 46 games this year. And that's going to be right in line with what I projected, but with a slightly better defense. And hats off to Chris Finch and his staff for putting together such an impressive, aggressive defense early this season, and also making some of these tweaks lately, more zone, mixing in drop coverage. Obviously, it was a disaster against the Spurs, and I think they need to be a little more judicious with their spots that they pick to play drop coverage. At any rate, that's another conversation. I mean, this is a good team. This is a good team. That's the summary here. And there's a really good chance they end up in 6th in the Western Conference at this point. I still think 7 is the most likely scenario, but 6, very doable. There's still a game against Denver. 6 is very doable. Okay, I want to close the show today by talking Wolves Lakers. If you haven't seen what the Lakers have been up to, I'll tell you, it's not pretty. And then why the Wolves should win this game on Wednesday, even with no Jaden McDaniels, with a bunch of guys questionable. Very winnable game. So I want to close the show by talking about that matchup. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at Built Bar. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels, though, like it's not really even a resolution because I actually do enjoy eating Built Bars. Have you tried Built Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. So good. These are going to be your new favorite. And plus, all Built Bars, including Puffs, are covered in 100% real chocolate. They're low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bar with these. Really, go to built.com, scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be absolutely blown away. High protein, low cal, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar. Your average candy bar is going to have 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and recently new white chocolate cookies and cream. Every single Built Bar is delicious. I have not had one that I don't like. They come out with new flavors all the time, and if they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It will be delicious, and it will be good for you. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They actually do. They make it taste delicious first, and then they figure out how to make it healthy, and I don't know how they do it, but they truly do pull it off every single time. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, let's talk Wolves Lakers. So what have the LA Lakers been up to? Well, they haven't won consecutive games since the first week of January. We're going on 9 weeks now since the last time the Lakers won consecutive games, which, by the way, was the last time the Wolves saw the Lakers in the middle of that mini winning streak. I think they won 4 straight. They beat the Wolves back on January 3rd. That was the last time the Wolves and Lakers played. Still no Anthony Davis. He got hurt in that game against the Wolves. He's been out since then. The Lakers, the last time they played, Monday night, right around the time Cat was wrapping up the 60 points, NBA Twitter was a little distracted between the Cat 60 points and the Lakers being down 21-2 to, I believe it was Toronto. Yeah, it was Toronto. Now, the Lakers came back and they made it relatively close and lost by 11. But I mean, they've lost what? Let's see. 8 of their last 10 games. They, again, haven't won consecutive games in 9 weeks now, going back to the first week of January. And their wins have come. I mean, they beat Golden State, a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago. They beat Utah like 3 weeks ago. But since then, their only win has been against the Washington Wizards, who, of course, have fallen on tough times of late. They were beat handily by the by the Phoenix Suns on Sunday. And then the next night was when they lost big to the Raptors. The 3 times the Wolves and Lakers have faced off this year, earlier this season, The Timberwolves won 2 games really kind of going away. They won the first matchup by 24 in Los Angeles, and then back at Target Center, they won by 18 before losing that matchup by 5 in early January. By the way, though, um, the the Timberwolves actually, I'm sorry, Anthony Davis did not get hurt in that game. He got hurt in a previous game. So Anthony Davis did not play in that game in January. LeBron did. Karl-Anthony Towns did not. This was at the tail end of the health and safety protocols for Karl-Anthony Towns. So Anthony Edwards was back and playing, but there was no D'Angelo Russell. There was no Karl-Anthony Towns on January 3rd. And the Wolves only lost that game by 5. And they were ahead going to the fourth quarter. Ant had 18 points in that game on 19 shots, not super efficient. Naz started and had 23 and 11. Pat Bev had 12, 9, and 6. Malik Beasley had 16 in the starting lineup. Jalen Noel only played 22 minutes off the bench, but this was kind of the peak of Jalen Noel time. He had 17 points off the bench in this game in 22 minutes. So this time around, still no Anthony Davis. Yes, Karl-Anthony Towns. LeBron James will likely play. He's got, I think, a sore knee. He's been in and out of the injury report. He did play, of course, on Monday. Would expect him to play Wednesday. But otherwise, the Lakers are really just missing Anthony Davis. The Timberwolves have a bunch of guys listed as questionable. Jordan McLaughlin with the groin. He didn't play Monday. He did play Saturday, but didn't play last Friday. Jared Vanderbilt has missed the last 2 games with the quad contusion. Patrick Beverley did play Monday. He's questionable with the ear contusion. Ant, I believe, is still on the injury report as questionable. I'm pretty sure. But, of course, he's played in the last couple. So the concern, of course, is no Jaden McDaniels, but it's not like the Lakers have like a murderer's row of wings that the Timberwolves need to worry about guarding, frankly. So it's really, I mean, it's LeBron, right? And that's it. There's not much else to worry about there in terms of the Lakers roster. I mean, Russell Westbrook is, well, we know what Russell Westbrook is. He's not what he was. I guess we'll just leave it at that. But that's kind of it. You're not worried about Malik Monk. Taylor Horton Tucker's obviously a good player. Probably going to come off the bench on Wednesday. There's not much there to be too concerned about. Matchup wise, it's not a problem for Minnesota. And I say all this obviously knowing that you can't count a win until it's a win. They're a decent defensive team. The Wolves aren't going to be able to walk all over them like they did against the Spurs on Monday, or even like they did to a Jimmy Butler-less Miami team on Saturday. But offensively, there's no reason that the Lakers should give the Wolves much trouble. Again, outside of LeBron, they're a pretty middle of the road 3-point shooting team. They don't get to the free throw line all that often. They're kind of middle of the pack in terms of free throw rate. You average out their free throw rate, free throw per field goal attempt. Defensively, again, pretty middle of the road. So if the Wolves play like they have been, of course, throughout that Orlando game last Friday, this shouldn't be too big of a problem for Minnesota, a relatively healthy Timberwolves team. But the other reason why this is such a big game, I think, number one, to not have a letdown after Monday's excitement, the big win, the 60 points for Cat, having won 8 out of the last 10 games. The Lakers have lost 8 out of the last 10. For all those reasons, this is an important game. But consider what's coming next for the Timberwolves on the schedule. And I've been talking about this now for 2 weeks because I think this could go one of two ways. It could go fairly decently, which would be emerging from the next 7 or 8 games with a 500 record over that stretch, or things could get ugly and people are going to say, what is this team, right? But I think it's important to remember after this Lakers game, look at the schedule. Milwaukee, one of the best teams in the league. Dallas, still a hot team, number 4 in the West. Phoenix, obviously the best team in the league. Dallas, again. Boston played much better of late. The Timberwolves, of course, beat them shorthanded in December, but they're a much different team now. Toronto just completely destroyed the Wolves right before the All-Star break. They're a really good team. Denver, I mean, if the Wolves come out of that, 7 games? If they come out of those 7 games at 4-3, could we be too upset about that? That would be a pretty good stretch. And even 3-4 wouldn't be the worst thing, especially if you can pick up a win against Dallas, one of the 2 against Dallas and a win against Denver. And then you get Houston, Washington, San Antonio, a little bit of a softer landing before finishing the year with the Chicago Bulls, who may or may not have positioning to play for, and I guess the Wolves too, on the final game of the regular season on April 10th. So this is important if for no other reason than to get 11 above 500 before a stretch of 7 difficult games. And then we're looking at maybe going 4-3. You're at 45 wins. You could pick up a couple against the Houston, Washington, San Antonio group, and you could sniff, 47, 48 when it's all said and done, which is certainly better than I think anyone really expected realistically this season for the Wolves. So the Lakers game is big for a number of reasons. Of course, we'll be back after the game on Wednesday with the post-game podcast, and we'll also have a show Friday previewing the weekend. The Wolves don't play Thursday or Friday, 2 consecutive off days finally for Minnesota before they get a matinee against the Bucks at Target Center Saturday afternoon. And then next week, that's when it gets crazy. We're back to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, every other day against very good teams. Of course, Daily Show will be with you every single day next week. Thank you to those of you that do follow this podcast and make us your first listen each and every day. Of course, Locked On Wolves is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey, really anywhere you like to listen to podcasts. You can find Locked On Wolves. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves. That's Locked On T-Wolves. Don't forget the T. And also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. That's all we have for today. Thanks again for listening to Locked On Wolves, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Also, one last reminder regarding Locked On NBA. Thank you again for making this your first listen. Make your second listen Locked On NBA. The Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.